Good morning, everybody. It's Cowboy. We have Veles here on a Friday, and I know this is a lot of people's favorite show. And it is, I don't know, it might be mine. It's hard to say. Now, Veles, I don't consider to be a guest. Veles is as much rogue as V and myself, but we do love that you come on and you give us your time on a Friday like this every week. It's just absolutely awesome. Before we get into the show, take a look at the description. We have a goodie in there for you. I've got an algorithm, trading algorithm. You get to watch me build it. It's a video that I made. You get to watch how it's done, see how people connect it to their broker so they can trade when they're not at the computer. But you do need to optimize it. It's not plug and play. Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. But you got to treat it like it's not. Either way. Also, we have a lot of great content on here. I know John, our friend John over in Washington State, likes to tell me he really loves our work. He's like, man, you gotta have Gus on more, Ben, and like, so we have him on once a week. But as we usually say, take a look at perpetualassets.com for Gus's work, help you with your IRAs. Take a look at Ben over at Contrarian Corner. Who else we got, Veles, on there? Who else we usually have to include on there? I'm blanking.
Oh,
we had them all on.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, what do you call it? Canadian Patriot for Matthew Arrett, and Tom Luongo's got what do you call it? You can find Tom.
He's got Gold Goats and Guns.
Yeah, Goats and Guns.
Yeah, our regular guest, if you will, though, it's Gus and don't sleep on Ben, guys. Ben does great work. So that's over at Contrarian Corner. So anyway, now that we're done with a very choppy introduction, Veles, I'm going to let you take it away, my friend.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Algo. Yeah, we're we're still picking up the pieces over here a little bit from having so many of our friends on one show at one time. There's such good content, and there's such good research available from everybody that was on yesterday's program, that it does tend to find itself needing to have the yellow light, red light thing for all of us, because we've got such a wide body of experts in different areas all in one sitting. And I think for Ben, it was probably the first time we've ever had him on that big a roundtable. So yeah, you're all stuck with me for another day. So that was just kind of me observing mostly yesterday, and then what do you call it? You've got me today, and then we'll see whether or not on the 8th of January I've got a program. It's looking doubtful, but we'll see. And Valley, I think you posted some comments here on YouTube before the show started. It does tend to do that where it deletes them. I don't know why that is, but anyway.
I do. So I put that this show is to premiere at 9 p.m. last night because, I messed up. That might have something to do with it.
No worries. So yeah, so we've covered Gus and Algo's pages. Just a reminder, if you want access to the Discord page, or you need to send us a note for whatever may be on your mind, you can reach me at the following email address, 1917veles@gmail.com. My thanks to those of you who have reached out. So moving into today's program, the hypothesis I shared on the last program about October 2026 and some kind of economic correction. Please keep in mind, it is a hypothesis. It's not really a well-baked theory. My point was to provide a framework of what I and others see and let you consider those ideas and whether or not you agree with it or have things to add. Equally, it's something to build on in the weeks and months ahead. A straw man, as they call it in consulting circles. You can remove the elements who don't hold up and add to it and flesh out the outcome. Equally in mind, please keep in mind the following. You'll often hear at the end of the year, beginning of another, people making those years out to be the biggest things you have or will experience. Oftentimes in the media, they've got to fluff things up a bit, or else their advertisers get unhappy. That's to be expected as people want to sell their view, gain clicks, or use an old reference, or sell newspapers. I'll offer a slightly different assessment. We've been on a long road, folks, and in some sense, a road who preceded us being on this earth, not just London and their friends, but specifically the Bretton Woods financial system created at the end of World War II. In fact, that was the topic when I first opened one of my first programs on ESW Rogue more than 5 years ago now. We'll probably find in 2026 is the year many aspects of that new financial system are finalized. And along those lines, noting that timeline of fall, roughly, the following is a certainty. We're going to continue to be flooded with distracting information and social events to keep us off balance. In military or intelligence circles, that's what they call counterintelligence. Nice sign. I'm struck by the irony of it being almost covered in snow. Be mindful of every planetary object acting strangely, odd signals from Mars, someone claiming disclosures about Antarctica, and the list goes on. That and a dearth of economic data who frequently is designed to do one of two things: make you pull out assets so big players can short those assets, or make everyone get into assets to drive up the price so that the power players could sell in one big liquidation. But overall, and because they've been fine-tuning various forms of frequency and narrative and related, from social media to our cell phones to whatever it may be, we're facing a world of ever increasing electronic noise to try and drown out, I wouldn't say the truth, but the facts that you need to know. So as I often say, this is one of the things we'll continue to do here to try and keep things clear. Can't keep an employee. When you work in public relations and you're from an expensive firm, you're going to deal with some serious personalities, very difficult personalities who are often shaped by their wealth and privileged. This often means working for some disagreeable people who've done some nasty stuff at times. You need to deflect or explain away. At least Count Prince Harry and his actress wife Meghan, or at last count, Prince Harry and his actress wife Meghan, have lost 5 PR firms working for them. This is like having lawyers quit working for you. How messed up do you need to be that you've burned up 5 public relations firms? Worse yet, that's an industry where everyone talks behind closed doors, nor, as I said earlier, is it anything unusual to deal with difficult clients. Who wants to represent that train wreck at this point? Equally, do they understand the people Harry has angered and they don't want those kinds of headaches? Scott Adams. Hi, V.
Hey, sorry, I was muted. I apologize.
Of course. Scott Adams. I've both agreed with and disagreed with Scott on a number of things over the years. That's what freedom is, the ability to agree and disagree respectfully. His commentary on the mind-numbing aspects of the workplace in the 1990s at times was the only thing keeping many of us going in so many of those industries. Based on his books, he also was a deeply spiritual guy in the sense of consciousness of the universe. He's made statements the last 24 hours. He doesn't believe he's going to make it beyond January due to his cancer. I'm deeply saddened to hear this, and he put up a heck of a fight. In the spirit of the ancient Egyptians, if this is indeed his path, I pray he passes unhindered by the 12 gates of the underworld. He's granted safe passage through the 6 caverns, and the 42 judges allow him to pass. He will be missed.
Scott Adams died?
No, but he made a statement like in the past saying he doesn't expect to live past January.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he has some aggressive cancer. Is it pancreatic?
Pancreatic.
Yeah.
That's a hell of
Yeah, it's a very low survival rate.
How to use AI. A little handy tip for those of you trying to work your way through artificial intelligence world and the various tools out there. First, a very good perspective was offered on LinkedIn recently. Do not think of artificial intelligence tools as software or a tool. Think of it as labor. Quite literally, my friends, think of AI tools as your workforce more than a piece of software. That's important, and frankly, it's one of the reasons why so many companies are struggling with AI and using it properly. They treat it like software or a software project instead of an extension of the organization's labor force. It means a change in thinking, and that's important. Second, keep in mind the AI tools you've heard about, like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini from Google, Copilot from Microsoft, Grok, and others, are for text improvement or general questions. Then you have tools focused on specific types of work, whether images, code writing, and similar. For instance, in the image creation world, there are tools like Steve AI, Canva, Juma AI, and many others. Therefore, when improving text or emails, you would use large language models, or LLMs, like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. For images and other types of work, like image creation, improving a PowerPoint, and similar, you would use the others. PowerPoint also now has its own native AI tool who can improve your PowerPoint documents as you create them. Third, the big one. This is a valuable tip and the main part of where I'm going with this. There are little helpful images on social media or IT articles showing a grid of what are you trying to accomplish, and then what phrase or prompt, as they call it, of terms you should use to have an AI tool perform the work you need. For instance, let us assume you want to simplify complex information. How do you do that? You instruct the LLM tool by typing in the following before providing it your content. Break down the topic or content into smaller, easier to understand parts. Use analogies and real-life examples to simplify the concept and make it more relatable. These little cheat sheets who are out there are helpful, and they do help you make you more effective in using these tools. Here's another thing, though, you may not have considered. Literally just tell the tool you're using what you're trying to accomplish, more specifically the outcome that you want to achieve. Then ask it to tell you how you should phrase your question or your instructions. 9 times out of 10, the tool will do exactly that, or it'll help you do it. Rather than worrying you have the correct cheat sheets with guidance and instructions, just ask the tool to tell you how you would ask it to perform the work you desire. Again, you can't do that with software like Word or Excel, but you can do it with AI tools. Trying to find publicly available AI tool who specifically does the kind of work you need performed and for whom an LLM tool is the wrong tool. Ask the tool something like, which AI tools who perform this type of work would you recommend I use to accomplish the following? Again, think of it in terms of if you were running a business and you hired somebody who's very good at their particular field, but you don't know much about their field. I found myself, especially in consulting, doing this a number of times. You just simply ask the employee or the consultant, how would you tell me to handle this problem, or how should I tackle this, or whatever. That is a more effective way of using these types of software tools that are out there. And I've had this conversation with folks who've just looked at the ceiling and shaken their head and said, "My God, I didn't even think of that." Where you just tell the tool, "I'm trying to accomplish the following. How do you recommend me ask you to do this?" Because I've literally, especially with Claude, a couple of times I've had Claude say, or respond back to me more accurately, "I don't do that. You may want to use this particular tool instead." Okay, thank you, Claude. That's not your purpose. It's not just Brendan O'Connell who's made statements like the following. Mike Moore, among others, have had similar experiences. This is when high-ranking people or their relatives or senior figures in the media approach them and flat out tell them the equivalent of, "Yeah, you're correct in your media broadcasts. The truth of situation X is what you've been saying it is. But if you work with us and parrot our narrative instead, we'll pay you money. We'll get you drugs, sex, whatever you want." These sorts of approaches, importantly, are made by both official sides of any issue or topic. It's not about the truth. It's about the narrative. Nothing can challenge the official narratives they offer. This is why the release of the movie JFK in the early 1990s was significant. Not because of its content, who was important, but because it effectively reached people and made them in that situation demand real action from their government. Yes, these narratives are often controlled by one party depending on the topic. The attempts at recruitment often occur after they've tried first to redirect you. Veles, what do you mean? It's a tactic who I've recently come to understand was developed by psychological operations and federal law enforcement by testing it out on the UFO community. UFO researchers would begin developing theories or insights about topic matter who could pose a problem if people connected the dots. Often, by the way, it wasn't necessarily about alien visitors per se, but classified programs and a variety of other concerns. During the 1950s and 60s, they perfected the use of certain kinds of disclosure or insider data to throw people off the track. The UFO researcher Linda Moulton Howe, unfortunately, has been compromised several times via that method, as have others in that community. Recall my comments previously about the war going on among various types of influencers, whether social media or official news programs from Fox to CNN. This is why when something like daycare fraud in Minnesota is discovered, it's all hands on deck to redirect the public to the chosen narratives. Anyone who discovers real facts will first be approached by insiders trying to misdirect them. If that doesn't work, we try the soft touch and see if you'll play ball. If that doesn't work, and depending on how well known you are, they try to destroy you, cut off your access to the internet, and several other approaches. This is how they destroyed Gary Webb, among others. If you're not too well known outside certain circles, like the researcher Gary DeVore, they find you in the driver's seat of your vehicle with your hands missing. Now that we have that out of the way, let me speak directly to this topic. Some of you may have seen the occasional posts on social media reminding us about Representative Melissa Hortman. She was the Democrat representative in Minnesota who didn't want to vote to support the health care bill in that state's government, adding additional care for foreign nationals to the state. She was also the Speaker of the State House of Representatives and was killed with her husband last June, immediately following her no vote on that legislation. She was killed by Vance Luther Bolter, who, if you just read what's on Wikipedia about him, you'll see several familiar patterns. He floated around a lot professionally, involved in strange religious groups and private security, and everyone's favorite. He was described by those who interacted with him as prone to fantasy about things he was involved in. So do any amateur researchers want to take a stab at this topic, especially what's come out about the child and medical care facilities in Minnesota? None of you drive a Ford Explorer, do you?
Wait a minute. Oh, just for those of you who didn't connect the dots.
I missed it. I didn't connect the dots. What happened?
Gary DeVore was driving a Ford Explorer.
Well, not just that. Childcare. She died, quote unquote, after not voting for healthcare for illegals. What's going on in Minnesota?
Sure.
Somali daycares with people who don't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it also begs the question: Did she know more about what was going on than we are aware? And that's why she.
I think that's where it lies.
Yeah,
he was onto something that was much deeper than health care for illegals.
No, health care for illegals who don't exist.
Yeah,
it's money laundering. At some
just
point,
pure money. And Veles, please go ahead. I don't,
no worries. It's there's I'm shooting for many layers there, folks. If we step back at this and look at it, as I often say, unemotionally, at the time of her death and her husband's death, we have a piece of legislation in Minnesota that has all the emotional hallmarks that are often found in the West Coast or the East Coast when something like this comes up. The emotional hot buttons of helping the needy, we need to do this, labeling people who are truly foreign nationals on U.S. soil as immigrants, because the first question I would want to ask is, show me the paperwork where they've applied to be a U.S. citizen. That's an immigrant. But many months later, what has come out? Well, it's not just Minnesota. It's now reached Ohio. Maine. Ohio's governor is now having to speak about it. Massachusetts, Washington State. It's like the video game Command and Conquer, where the game starts with your little pocket of soldiers in the center of the screen, and you have to kind of send them in every direction so that they can scout out what the rest of the battlefield looks like. And that's kind of what's happening is, even while the revelations of what's going on in Minnesota are taking place, it took some folks. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I had completely forgotten about her until somebody posted something on X, and I kind of leaned back in my chair and thought, that's right. She and her husband were killed, and there was an attempt on a state senator's life that same night.
And if I may, I usually hold everything to the end, but this is key. So you remember how after that no vote, she was scared. They had an interview of her.
Yes.
She was scared for her life. So this shows you how far back all this goes.
Yes. And we're now finding, I'll get into it a little later today. We're now finding that, no shocker, these daycares in Minnesota, among other states, they have been making contributions to elected representatives' political campaigns and to non-governmental organizations. So this is classic Sun Tzu, the Chinese tactician. You've got federal money going to what in CIA circles they call a blind, which is a false business. Then that money goes to politicians who vote to send money to those organizations and to non-governmental organizations. But as the old saying goes, but wait, there's more. It's come out recently now that the United Nations, in a stunning move, have appointed to, I think it's the Human Rights Commissioner for the United Nations, is now the Somali representative, which just to be Veles, my first response to that is, you don't have a country. I mean, I'm sorry, nothing personal. And I don't just mean like, oh, you're a Caribbean island who's fronting as a bank. I mean, like, literally, bro, you do not have a cohesive, you don't even meet the top 10 things required in political science to be considered a functioning political state.
Yeah.
But wait, that representative was running charity organizations in the state of Ohio that received money from child care centers.
You can't. It writes itself.
Make this up.
It literally writes itself.
Oh,
look at me. I am at your daycare now.
No, yes, I am your daycare now.
I am running for president now.
It's the joke I said on my last program about Knox from the reporter Knox from the first the Batman movie from 1989, where he literally saw Jack Napier fall into the vat of chemicals, right. And he's asking them, what's the official answer on his death? And the police department he's speaking to says suicide, and he like holds the phone away and goes, suicide, hang on a minute, I'm getting my recorder. So yes, revelations as we move through Minnesota and Ohio and Washington State and other states. Several questions. First, how many fraudulent schemes are there with false federal kickbacks, and how pervasive nationally? I would respond to that first question with beyond your wildest dreams. Second, what other types of fraud, separate from the child care scheme, is ongoing? Case in point, it now appears, yes, we already covered that. Oh, and on a related note, we've covered on prior.
Here's a bigger question.
There you go. Yeah.
Right? Who, like, these are some dumbass Somalians, right? They're not too bright. Who's sitting on top of this running these idiots? That's the multi-billion-dollar question.
I think Tim Waltz wants a word.
Well, good, yeah, Tim Waltz has entered the conversation. Well, and I was sharing with V and Algo folks, as you often hear us mention this because we're always chattering behind the scenes. I would tell you that, in my opinion, and that's all it is, Tim Waltz right now is probably as frightened as the former Speaker of the Minnesota House, because, as is often the case in these situations, the man is completely expendable. Oh, yeah. And if he, again, to quote from the Joker, I know people who are going to roll, and this guy's going to roll. Tim Waltz would sell out his mother.
I know squealers.
I know squealers, and this guy's a squealer. Exactly. Tim Waltz would sell out his mother. And anybody who has been having Tim be involved in this fraud knows he's a squealer. So do you let this guy squeal and provide a whole bunch of detail to prosecutors should something even see the light of day? Or does he just have a car accident? Now, meanwhile, certain parties are now listening to this show, crossing out a car accident off their list of possible things. But
I don't know, he might have a date with a nail gun. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hear he likes it from behind.
Who had nail gun? Who had nail gun?
I had nail gun.
Yeah,
that didn't work.
He's and then
carbon monoxide poisoning.
Then he did the thing you never do in these situations, and this is corporate 101. I had some folks working with me in management consulting many years ago, and when we were in Washington, we had a number of retired senior executives who were providing management consulting work to government agencies. And one of my colleagues asked me, who I'd worked with previously, why is it none of these guys and gals can write an email worth a damn? And I said, well, not to be indelicate, but they haven't written an email in years. I'm like, you remember the experiences we had at the companies where we worked before we were doing this? I said, you reach director or higher in a commercial organization. There's so much risk attached to any communications you may send out. Everything you do has to go through PR and has to go through legal. And so I'm like, they're stunted, if you will, at that level. And so you don't ever get on front of cameras, Tim. And that's what he did when he made the famous statement. Well, there's a lot of white people. It's like, no, this is not the time, Tim, to go down the narrative about all white people are evil. You just made it worse. In fact, if anybody was thinking of, well, we'll let this blow over, Tim will be fine, we can keep him in place, those same people were like, oh, shit, now he's done it. So anyway.
Tim can't keep his mouth shut.
He can't. And that makes him further a risk, because what is he saying behind closed doors or to people that may get out?
Tim.
So
for a guy with pedigree to get to the governor, he's not very smart. Which tells you a lot about who gets to be governor.
Well, he didn't need to be. Plus, the other thing, and again, V and Algo and I were chatting about this. There's someone conspicuously missing in defending Tim Walz.
Ilhan Omar?
Yeah. No,
heels up.
Yeah.
Oh!
His I wouldn't say his running mate, the person he was running for office with.
Yeah, heels up Harris.
Kamala. How much have we forgotten? We're still looking at the woman in the red dress.
Who's wanting to run for California governorship?
Yeah, that won't happen. That won't happen in a lot of ways. The other question on this whole mess, and we had mentioned it on a prior Rogue program, was there's a lot of methods to launder. And one of the ones that's a favorite of mine, and I thank Crazy Days and Nights for this, but it's come out through others. In a number of places like, Scottsdale, Arizona, and along the beach in California, and South Carolina, and a couple other little spots, you have these little boutique art places, where a chunk of glass has been polished into something looking like a tooth, and it's going for $5 million. That's how you launder money, folks, because it's not like a bar of gold where everyone and their brother could say, well, yes, as of today and per the market price, that thing is worth exactly this. You have somebody who buys a $5 million piece of artwork. The art place now has $5 million, of which they give back $4 million to the person who purchased it. But that money's now all clean. And it's been going on forever. And there's a lot of like Hollywood notables who are involved in some of these art museums where, again, it's purely speculative. There's no, it's like all the engineering folks I knew in college used to sometimes give me a little crap because I was an international affairs major. And they're like, we live in a world of mathematics, Veles. I mean, you just look at political situations and go, I think it's this. They're like, where's the math? And I'm like, there's no math. It's the same thing here. Same thing with used car lots. And I hate to say it, but certain used car lots that tend to be near places where a lot of methamphetamine is being sold. That's another one.
Speaking of which, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll say a bunch of Hunter Biden's paintings went up in the Palisades fires, I hear.
Oh. What are the odds? Hey, here's a question. Were those insured? Because that's laundering.
I know I didn't have to say it.
Third, how much of the United States' gross domestic product is connected to these fraudulent programs? I mean, again, this is another one of those moments where Americans will say things like, well, we could never have an Adolf Hitler here in the United States. Actually, America, you did. It was... help me, V. It was the general back in the 1920s.
Smedley Butler.
Thank you. If Smedley hadn't turned on the Vanderbilts and others, we would have had Hitler first.
Yeah.
So we don't want to make fun of other countries, as I'm about to point out. But I mean, like Greece and Italy, the term that's used is, quote, the gray economy. Well, 20-30% of their economy is gray. It's transactions that aren't exactly legal. Or to quote from the movie Caddyshack, Danny doesn't want to be involved in something as illegal as this. So it's the same thing here. We've got folks that are fairly smart and are saying, hey, 1 to 3% of the U.S. gross domestic product could be fraudulent. Well, first thing is, we're a $23 trillion economy. So 1% of $23 trillion is a lot of money, folks. The next thing is, there's a number of people, and myself included, who would say that number actually may be closer to 10%. In fact, 10% may be too conservative. But the kitchen table item, as Mike Moore would say, is imagine how much less tax money the government would need if that fraud wasn't there. How much less all of us would be paying in taxes if that fraud was not there. Another item is let's go back to U.S. aid. How far down the rabbit hole did the U.S. aid fraud go? I mean, yes, we've acknowledged there was fraud. Various programs were publicly identified in the media as being absolutely absurd, and the organization's been shut down. But to channel what we were all saying yesterday on towards the latter half of yesterday's program, and where are the prosecutions of people from U.S. aid? Where are the prosecutions of people who received that aid that are in the United States or even overseas? Where is Interpol? No, we just shut it down. It was highly fraudulent in America. We shut it down. And where's the rest of it? And then it's been said by many, and it's been documented by many, all the fraud that was going through Ukraine. You can't really run an investigation when there's a shooting war going on, but when that war ends, what happens then? Now, to the degree that you want to perhaps risk your safety a bit, there are a lot of angles in all of this. I'm dead serious to make money, including filing with the Treasury Department claims. Yes, they're charities, but even charities still have to report their taxes. And if a charity is discovered as being fraudulent, well, now the Treasury Department can go get money out of them. And of course, the child care centers and similar are going to have to, if they even don't flee the country, which may also solve part of that foreign national problem. Where I'm going with this is start, using AI tools, folks, and start crafting up documentation through the Treasury Department. I forget, it's like a 201 form or something. No, that's CIA. Anyway, it's the form that you file with Treasury where you get 30% back. And for kicks, if these businesses are not using the amount of water they should for caring for those children, maybe the Water Department's Inspector General should take a look. I mean, there are we have choices, America. There are things we could be doing right now, and you might even be able to make a buck. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure our legal friend of the program, just with a cup of coffee and a half an hour, could come up with probably 10 things that could be filed against a number of different businesses, including fly-by-night art museums, to make a couple of bucks when Treasury starts looking into this. And if Treasury doesn't do that, then you go poke the Inspector General office of the Treasury Department and ask them, there's money on the table, why aren't you going after it? Moving right along, Dave Chappelle. For those of you who know the comedian, he recently said he's become a lightning rod in a way he didn't attend. Other comedians and media personalities have criticized Chappelle for a performance he did in Saudi Arabia. Chappelle's response to that was, yes, the death of the reporter Khashoggi is a tragedy given how he apparently died. Then Chappelle went on to say, but Israel's killed hundreds of reporters, and I don't see anyone discussing that.
Ooh.
He said that on stage.
He's always been based.
Yeah. He equally said, you'll know when the powers out there have compromised him. He said, I'm going to give you a secret signal. And he goes, the secret signal is, I stand with Israel.
I remember him saying, he says, once you hear that, don't believe anything else that I say afterwards.
Right.
Yeah,
that's the giveaway.
In 2019, he did the Kennedy Center Award, Lifetime Achievement. And right at the very end, right before COVID hit, he said, and this is almost verbatim, he goes, the First Amendment is the most important amendment, but the Second Amendment is there just in case the first don't work.
Who's that?
To a bunch of liberals, by the way.
Whose impersonation was that?
That was Chappelle.
Sounds like Ross Perot.
Well, the way he said it, yeah.
Gonna fix the infrastructure.
Here's the state of Arkansas. It's a big chicken.
Yeah, it's a big chicken.
Sounds like Ross Perot. Go ahead.
All we got to do is we got to fund the infrastructure, and we fix that. We fix everything.
I went to Iran and got my employees out. What's this guy done? Charlie Kirk. I continue to investigate whether an autopsy was performed, and even if under Utah law, it's not treated as public information. To date, and it doesn't mean it's not out there, I cannot locate any quote-unquote proof of an autopsy being performed on Charlie Kirk. Item 2, nor can I find proof of his being buried, cremated, ashes spread in private, etc. This is a habeas corpus matter, folks, on the basis of our legal system. A crime has been committed. He was murdered. So in legal circles, that's why they use the phrase habeas corpus, meaning loosely, you shall have the body or bring the body to court to prove a crime was committed. The man was murdered. Being a crime makes evidence important. On a side note, I found it amusing that while exploring various avenues to find information, in this case my AI tools, something occurred for the first time using an AI tool that has never occurred in my entire life. One of my tools kept asking me why I'm asking so many questions about Charlie Kirk and do I think a conspiracy is involved. Even I had to lean back from my computer and close my windows when that appeared on my screen. This is amusing because it never asked me those questions when I used AI tools to investigate Unit 8200 or Cicada 3301. But this piqued its interest. But wait, there's more. Thanks to a public record request, I am now the proud owner of Charles and Erica's marriage contract. I'm quite serious about that. I have a hard copy of their marriage contract here in my office.
Oh, wow.
Who were their wedding witnesses? Erica's father's sister, Carla, who's her paternal aunt, and a gentleman from the board of Turning Point USA named Mike Miller. The ceremony was performed by Robert, or Rob, McCoy, who was the pastor of a megachurch in California called God Speak Calvary Chapel. Yet again, when it comes to the American media, the best write-up about things in Charlie's life and this minister was none other than the Hindustan Times of India, because I can't find an appropriate write-up in the United States. Yes, once again, I had to go to foreign media as no one in the U.S. wants to speak truth about this matter. The Hindustan Times of India said Rob McCoy introduced himself as Charlie Kirk's pastor at the conservative activist's funeral service at the State Farm Stadium in Glendale. McCoy recalled Kirk saying the Turning Point USA founder was never afraid and without sin. McCoy is the pastor emeritus of Godspeak Calvary Chapel, an evangelical Christian church in Thousand Oaks, California, where he served as the lead pastor until his transition to emeritus status in recent years. A prominent figure in conservative Christian circles, McCoy has been Charlie Kirk's personal pastor and close friend. He co-founded Turning Point USA Faith in 2021 with Kirk, an arm of Turning Point USA aimed at mobilizing churches for conservative causes like voter registration and opposition to progressive policies. McCoy's background includes a long career in ministry with Godspeak Calvary Chapel, known for its outspoken conservative stance, which included defiance of the COOF restrictions in 2020 and 21 when he kept the church open against California's mandates, unquote. To clarify, so far there's nothing dark and mysterious about anything I just said, at least not yet. It was known Charlie Kirk had been friends with this megachurch leader for some time. Regardless of what one may think of megachurches, that is, the marriage record clearly shows the 8th of May, 2021 in Paradise Valley, Arizona as the date and location of their marriage. It was a small ceremony with no bridesmaids or groomsmen, just the minister and 2 witnesses. So what's my point? This is another example of if you want answers, fill out some forms, spend some time performing research, and double check what you find. AI searches and various websites offer all sorts of misleading data points. And once I had this thing in my hand, it was amazing. I mean, again, it's that line from The Matrix. After a while, you no longer see the code. You just see dog, tree, building. Because I would see the patterns in the disinformation in what's posted in both pro and anti Charlie Kirk postings in social media versus the document I'm literally holding in my hand. There were even folks in the alternative media suggesting they were never even married. Are there data points from this marriage record worth researching? Sure. Am I going to do that? Not currently, though I will be keeping an eye on Carla, Michael, and the minister for sure. Equally, if noting Dave Chappelle, they start stating frequently they stand with Israel, it might be worth noting. In conclusion on this item, for now, when there's a flurry of activity of opinions or disinformation on a topic, go conduct a public records search and get the darn hard copies. Oh, and we are about to experience, depending on how you feel on the topic, some mind-blowing revelations about Erica. That is, unless the people delivering that information should slip in the shower for some reason. Too early. A viral idea for you to consider. Why bother with creating the Doge organization if you're not going to use it? Like criticism of Robert Kennedy's efforts, there's a view that both were shut down by the sheer momentum of government bureaucracy and people sent to prevent those efforts from being successful. This is particularly true if rumors about certain people inside the CDC and NIH are correct. Whether those individuals have been sent by London, Davos, or the profit margins of Big Pharma are irrelevant. It's about the outcome. Both organizations and efforts have stopped. However, an idea has occurred to me, nor do I believe this is white hat wishful thinking. Have they been stopped for now and by design? We're only beginning to understand the depths of frauds across the United States and globally, a process who stretches back to the Nugan Hand Bank and the Panama Papers, among other revelations. I'm both serious and on a deadly level. We're going to delve a bit into the Minnesota thing later. Further, there are rumors and that something on par with that may be revealed in Ohio shortly, which it already has. I'll laugh like a tickled schoolgirl if it turns out there's any sort of connection to the Wexners. My point is, those directing Donald, both previously and at present, have used tactical effort to test various things slowly and incrementally, to reveal all the locations of one's adversary. U.S. aid was only the beginning, and more is coming. The level of corruption goes beyond your mayor's brothers-in-law getting a construction project. We're talking about tens of billions, if not more, being funneled via everything you can imagine. When those financials get disrupted, even if only marginally at first, a great wailing will be heard from parties who want to know where the money is. Oh, and from the memory hole, how quickly we have forgotten, and this was the item about, Kamala Harris and the former Speaker of the Minnesota House. Virginia. The new governor of Virginia is Abigail Spanberger. It's worth noting she's a former CIA case officer. It's a bit more of a role with that agency than as an analyst. This is not to say she was endorsed by, nor her campaign funded by the CIA, as that would be illegal. As we've noted on Rogue, the state of Virginia is a weather vane for the rest of the country, particularly the previous 10 years of battles in Loudoun County, where parents have pushed back against ideological content being taught in that school district. Importantly, active CIA employees work as congressional lobbyists and aides who, according to many, jeopardize the integrity of the legislative and executive branches of government. I, for one, welcome our insect overlords, to quote Ken Brockman from The Simpsons. Speaking of the company, give me one moment, folks. Speaking of the company, recently pointed out former CIA directors worked with Rob Reiner, and a media company designed to attack the current administration. Another former CIA director, Mike Pompeo, has also been active, a Ukraine war hawk for some time and claiming the Russians are committing genocide, of which they are not, and never saw military aid he didn't agree with. It was during Pompeo's time at the CIA the agency set up 12 clandestine bases following the 2014 Maidan coup, when none other than John McCain openly admitted Western governments overthrew Ukraine's government. It has now come out Pompeo is on the board of directors of a company called Firepoint, who develops long-range drones who can strike targets deep inside Russia. Pompeo has been working with U.S. officials and U.S. arms industry to further develop Firepoint's weapons offerings. I'd also be amused to find out which elected officials from the U.S. government's kids are on the board of directors. The big global picture. Recall the German documentary I mentioned a few times previously called Master of the Universe. It was about a senior leader in private equity after his retirement, was filmed roughly in 2014-2015. The subject of the document, the person they interviewed in the documentary said loosely, and I quote, they want to take out the EU before the new economic system comes online. To do that, you have to take out Germany. And before you can take out Germany, you have to take out France, unquote. When we view economic and social events in those two countries during the last 10 years, that picture becomes rather clear. Paraphrasing Patrick Ryan again, they were able to remove a player from the big table without causing a global war in the process. Recall what he said about eliminating a trillionaire means global war every time. In this case, they eliminated a major power from the new economic model, both without global war and millions dead. Though, if you think of the Ukraine conflict wasn't a consequence of what I just described, we're fooling ourselves. You must hand it to the global elites. They didn't wipe out an empire or kill a quarter of the population of a country like they've done previously. They simply had the global casino manager, who's the global economy, tell the EU they've exceeded their credit limit in the casino and they need to leave the building. Alternative media personalities. First, one needs to define what constitutes an alternative media personality. Is it just that you wear a hat on YouTube, you sell branded merchandise, you interview others like yourself you once worked with at Fox News? What exactly are the criteria? Brendan O'Connell weighs in on this topic periodically, and Mike Moore branded it as the trading card heroes in the alt media, unquote. In all seriousness, though, let me throw a hand grenade out there. I've had family and friends ask me how much money you guys make with Rogue News, how much I personally make. This is the response I've given to everyone from family to friends to people in private equity. No one makes money with a podcast, period.
Exactly.
Simply put, if you're on YouTube, if you do make money, YouTube will shut you down or shadow ban you. Yeah. And even if you're on Rumble, Twitch, or any of a host of platforms that, for instance, quite frankly, is on a number of those. We do this, and I'm speaking on behalf of Algo and V and myself, along with the others. We do it because we're passionate about the content. 100%. We enjoy it. We enjoy interacting with all of you and a number of other reasons. Now, yes, Matthew and some other folks we've had on, publish books and things, and more power to them. But on the whole, the program itself, this is not a money-making enterprise for us. This is a work of our love for what we do. Additionally, for me personally, this is my classroom because no university on this planet is going to let me teach, even though I have the credentials. So I thank you all for sitting in on today's class. People I know on all sides of the political spectrum no longer trust traditional media, so alternative media providers are critical. I would also throw in, we lost something when the major news organizations many of us grew up with went stale. They were at least consistent and broad in their reach, even if their political leanings were obvious. I'm talking about the likes of Sam Donaldson on ABC, to CNN in the early days, to NBC's Ted Koppel, the latter being a man that even Rush Limbaugh used to say had a voice on loan from God. But you see, to me, our landscape of information out there has become, say it with me, balkanized, just like they want the country to become balkanized. Not one unified country, but a series of factions with no relationships at all with their neighbors. When I grew up or was in college, many in this country might discuss Ted Koppel having one of his excellent programs on Nightline. For that matter, the slightly more erudite in society would watch the PBS investigative program Frontline. Whether on a subway train in New York, an airport in Nashville, or a truck stop in Kansas City, people would discuss such programs because many had seen them. Now we're trying to reference data about our lives with one another via various personalities or providers the people you're interacting with may not have even heard of. This is why Joe Rogan suddenly became obvious along with others like him. They're centralized sources of commentary, but they're far more distinct in who is funding them than the old networks. So again, Rogue News, as I often joke, is the outfit who follows the old handcrafted note along with something you just bought. This product was made by hand and not machine and will contain certain imperfections and patinas who are part of its unique character. We thank you again, everyone, for listening to all of us. Truth hidden in public news. Was there truth in Wiener's laptop being an insurance policy more than a whoops, how did that get public sort of thing? Yes, various documents and images attributed to his laptop were embarrassing to him. And was that just his content? It's more an investigative journalist sort of thing of how much of his hard drive was utilized with data and how much of that figure was his dating website photos. If there's a large discrepancy between the two, what was the other content? Did he keep insurance on his personal laptop? Much like some other content I have today, are we asking the right questions and finding original source material? Is the truth right in front of us and the media distracted us again? So let's turn to Hunter Biden's laptop. Thanks to Knight on Discord the week of December 22nd, he asked questions that should have occurred to us the minute this content on his laptop was revealed. But we allowed ourselves to be distracted by the Matrix woman in the red dress. Because sex workers, Barack Obama's daughter, and lines of cocaine off said sex workers' behinds formed into lines with an American Express card with the Obama's name on it. We didn't ask what insurance Hunter had on that laptop. Equally, he was on Burisma's board of directors, that being the former power company in Ukraine, not to mention other U.S. officials' kids sitting on that board. What data about that little item did he have on his laptop, much less all the payments the Biden family receives in Delaware? What about Nancy Pelosi and other officials' kids who are on those boards of directors of these foreign companies? This is why it always takes time after we hear the initial story to get to the root of what was it really about. I hate to say it, but sex and skin of high-profile individuals for some reason captures the public's attention more effectively than the head of a foreign government was assassinated or trillions of dollars are missing. Per comments from friends of Rogue, and I quote, "Could the whole MacBook concept been a concocted story because some opposition researcher got their hands on Hunter's Apple iCloud account and siphoned off a copy of his data from all of his Apple devices and then passed the hard drive with the information to Miles Gao, also known as Ho Wan Kwok, Gua Wengui, and Brother Seven? Unquote. Therefore, when local or federal law enforcement are making a raid on someone's residence, they're seeking hard drives, memory sticks, and backup drives because their hacking didn't find the data they wanted. The data in every case being any information that could be used to keep folks in check via blackmail. It's never about the law or truth, but who knows what about who. I find it amusing the kids of the powerful, thanks to never having a good parent, are the weakest link in these power structures. Movies. One of the movies coming out in 2026 is Greenland 2. If you recall the first Greenland movie, this is a series dealing with survivors of a planetary catastrophe. Shockingly, in this one, it appears as they must flee their bunkers to find yet another safe place of refuge on the Earth. During that time, they encounter survivors from the first film. Those survivors, from the brief clips that have been shown for previews, are not happy about the chosen ones who got to go to the bunkers. Yet another reminder of what the world's elites believe should some form of disaster visit the human condition of this world. They know the rage of the survivors. FBI meme is not a joke. We've seen various jokes on the internet where something happens, usually violent, and the joke has an FBI person saying, "We've been aware of that person for some time." Never mind they had an informant, note what I said earlier about informants, inside Omar Abdel Rahman's group who bombed the World Trade Center in 1993. This one from Dave Chappelle again. During a comedy routine, he pointed out that 30 years ago, Sean Puffy Combs, one of the rappers being watched by a dedicated FBI task force. This unit's purpose was to monitor rap stars who may have had connections to criminal groups. The task force monitored him for 30 years, and Chappelle asked why it took the government monitoring a guy who was under surveillance for 30 years and known to be violating the law before anyone charged him. Here's another one, folks. Should you or your kids ever find yourself in certain entertainment venues or clubs, Chappelle made a comment that caught my attention. It was just buried within his material he was using for his routine. Yeah, he was on our radar. In certain entertainment venues or clubs, if certain lights turn on, usually colored lights, like a specific color, like orange or blue or something like that, for people who know, that's to warn the folks in the club, whether rappers or otherwise, that undercover agents have been spotted in the club, and for them to exercise caution. Chappelle made a comment where he said something to the effect of like the Fed lights are on. And Chappelle said this was an indicator where if certain lights around the bar or whatever suddenly turned on, that was to indicate to anybody doing cocaine or whatever, you may want to put that back in your pocket for a minute. We got feds in here. I won't go into it, and we were going to use it to open yesterday's program. But for any of you who can, go check out Carl Denninger's KarlDenninger website. He had the 2025 year in review where he reviewed his predictions for 2025, what he got right, what he got wrong, and then his predictions for 2026. There's some very good stuff in there, and definitely worth checking out. Slavic Revenge. The world's apex elites may have created what in Navy circles they call a hot fish. That's when a torpedo has been fired returns to strike the vessel who fired it. About a year ago, Tom Luongo warned anyone poking their nose around the conflict in Ukraine needs to stay the heck out of it. The phrase he used was loosely, "This is a Slavic blood feud between Russia, Ukraine, and a chunk of Europe." To make an unfair broad generalization on my part is the following. China will not tolerate ethnic groups inside their borders who want their own identity, even if they have one. Tibetans, Uyghurs, Muslims, hardcore Christians, and the list goes on. You can do your thing, but only within the context of you being Chinese Tibetans or Chinese Muslims or Chinese Catholics with a Communist Party approved bishop. Your loyalty is to China, not to your other identity or identities. There's a vast history in China for nearly 3,000 years of why China interprets things that way, because every time they've strayed from that attitude, it's been a disaster.
Yep.
It's their history, and it's why decisions they make often can upset Western sensibilities. Nor is that an endorsement on my part of some of those policies in China. In Russia, during the imperial period, the royal Russian government referred to various ethnic or religious groups as being part of the quote-unquote other Russias. They would often refer to the Tsar as the Emperor of all the Russias, plural. It's one of the reasons the old imperial flag of Russia was the black, yellow, and white tricolor, and it had a two-headed Byzantine eagle. But importantly, versus the use of that eagle in Russia's official documents and flags and things today, in that period, that eagle had little shields on its wings. 8, in fact, as I look at the one sitting on my wall. Each of those shields represented key cities and regions of Imperial Russia, representing this inclusive approach to the empire. Yes, Russia at times sought subjugation of a Chinese variety in its history, but in the empire's view, that could become costly. They preferred inclusion within the umbrella of the empire for the Cossacks, the Ukrainians, the Kazakhs, the Uzbeks, and a variety of other peoples and religions. During the Soviet period, one of the things rarely said outside classified circles in the West was the fact the Soviet military, in part, was to hold the country together by force. Thank you. They would not fight as a unified force in the satellite state uprisings in Hungary in '56 and Czechoslovakia in '68, and the social changes of the very late '80s in the Soviet Union demonstrate this conclusively. Yet the Russians and the Chinese have a keen understanding of their history. Further, as Westerners, we must remember when we say history, we do not mean all the way back to the ancient history of the 1950s or even the late 1880s. No, I'm talking about literally over thousands of years for them both. That's a bit more than the 200th anniversary of the United States this July in the year of our Lord 2026. Further, the Chinese are very familiar with the number of times their lands and peoples have faced borderline extinction and subjugation. In the last 80-plus years, we have Nanking during World War II, and in the hundreds of years prior is Western colonialism. China is still waiting for an apology, much less an acknowledgement from Japan for Nanking, and many non-military necessary horrors during that war. They're also waiting for an apology and true internalization in the West about hundreds of years of colonialism and forced opium addiction. This is not about ancient history to them, as they're people who historically know how they came to be today. Life's difficulties of an evolving society are one thing, and the events I've described are unnecessary cruelty and racial supremacy. So back to one of my ethnic communities, the Russians, who stem from the ancient Scythians. There are many ethnic groups and countries who know they're controlled by others. For all their resentment, they know there are limits to anything they can do about it. It's something else when you factually understand a group of apex elites are responsible for the clearances in Scotland, the Irish famine, working the Welsh to death in the coal mines, 1,000 injustices visited upon the people of India, and the elimination of aristocratic families of Prussia, Germany, and Austro-Hungary. It's an even further revelation when you realize from documents now public the nearly 200-year-long plan to subjugate your country and your people nearly out of existence, to turn Russia and your people into the world's largest strip mine and slave labor force. Yet that country and its current and predecessor intelligence agencies have also acquired data who is not public. That data from your intelligence agencies provides more evidence of what was done to you. There are moments even in a conflict between the Klingons and the Federation when the characters realize a third party is manipulating them. Millions of my people were murdered by my own people in the name of creating a better system than the monarchy. Historically, Imperial Russia was moving towards more representative government and positive social changes prior to the outbreak of World War I. What occurred following that was slaughter and nearly wiped us out. There's a phrase in the Russian diaspora community who goes to the effect, "We have to save our history before we disappear into oblivion," unquote. If you could put global leaders of the white Russian community, the current Russian leadership, and even the advocates of the Soviet Union in a room, their differences would disappear faced with the revelation of historical fact of what happened to us. Regardless of the economic and social system, any of Russia's communities desire or desired, if the alternative was extermination, we can argue about our differences later. The fate of our people is what is at stake, much less our history. Some of you are probably wondering, okay, Veles, where are we going with this? We're going here. Did the London Corporation and their allies make the business decision, shall we say, to annihilate the German, Austro-Hungarian, and Russian leadership via the mechanism of World War I to achieve their goals, who resulted in famine, pestilence, and future war in Europe a little over 20 years later, and millions more would die? Further, they attempted to make the Russian people a memory on par with the Hittites of the Bronze Age. London Corporation and others were willing to put the integrity of this planet at risk in order to achieve their aims. In contemporary time, you have a nationalist leader in Russia who's fended off multiple assassination attempts. He and his allies are equally aware of the entire, both public and private history of what was done to Russia for more than 100 years. Further, these same people are aware you're fighting hidden enemies who consider you a mortal threat to their power. They'll never stop coming after you. That same Russian leader's been in control of Russia for 25 years, where the country's fine-tuned its intelligence services, possesses hacking assets who are not to be taken lightly, and a renewed military machine. For roughly 3 years, Ukraine's military has been tragically wiped out. Mercenaries do not want to fight there anymore, and Europe is threatening to officially put their troops on the ground. The picture I'm painting for us is there are elements of this conflict we've missed entirely, in part because the individuals involved cannot let the general public understand what's really taking place. No one wants to put NATO troops on the ground because Russia's going to invade. Further, only a piece of this picture may be Europe's need to launder money and justify military spending. The Russians are loose now, and in a fashion they want payback with London. Whether someone of Slavic background is an advocate of democracy, a socialist, a liberal, intellectual liberal, conservative, monarchist, nihilist, or anything else, they're still Slavs. For over 100 years, the Russian people globally have been rebuilding what occurred to us in 1914. We know who did this to us for more than 100 years, and remember, folks, we still do not know what those Western bioweapons labs were doing in Ukraine before the shooting started.
Exactly.
But the current Russian government does because they captured the labs and they captured the banks that were funding them. This is not about Vladimir Putin for absolutely no reason at all is going to invade all the way to Paris because we're evidently back in the period of the Napoleonic Wars. This appears to be Russia's decided to finally address the bad actors sitting in London. Does this mean militarily? Well, it did in Ukraine, and we see where that timeline has taken us. The rest of it may take different forms. Was Ukraine used by the apex elites to hasten the process of removing the EU as a viable player at the table per my earlier comments today? This seems logical, but who knows? Especially once events were in motion, there are many factions and goals. When it comes to Russia or China specifically, their history does matter, and their sense of justice matters. Further, they know they face an adversary who will never stop coming after them. If you were the Russian or Chinese leadership in these circumstances with that history, and the events you've seen unfold the last 3 years, what would you do if you're them? Boja Zarya Hrani. I yield the floor, gentlemen.
Very good, man.
Can you translate that last bit?
God save the Tsar.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was. There were a couple of things you said, and then the things I was gonna follow up with. You covered them.
Hey, we got a good dynamic here.
No, it's killer.
This product may have certain imperfections, but
it always makes me think of the Fight Club scene where he's talking about the cups in his cabinet filled with the tiny bubbles of imperfection to show that these items were made by the indigenous peoples of wherever. Now, V, you go first.
No, I think the gamut that you ran on today's show is phenomenal. I mean, it's great, man. It's highlights a lot of things, and it kind of also sets up with what is going to occur this year going forward. This is a pivotal year for a lot of things, and I think a lot of things are going to be made manifest, and I think that people need to be realistic about what we're facing here, that there's no grand master plan out there, that reality is reality, and reality is tough, and that's what Veles is laying out for all of us. There's so many points here that we have to consider, that we have to add to our calculations and our tabulations of where we are and what we're going to do in the next several months as this year progresses. So great job, Veles.
Thanks, brother. It's a great graphic you got there, Algo. The 3 obelisks.
Yeah, and as I brought that up as you were talking about Russia and Ukraine, and the thought that occurred was, to the people who run the city of London, which are, continental Europeans, Israelis have married into the royal families and stuff. To that group, Ukrainians and Russians have one thing in common when they die, is that they're dead Slavs, which is all fine to them, from what I understand. I don't know. I don't talk to anybody at City of London, but that's just what I heard.
Well, that's always Tom Luongo's narrative, that there's, and it obviously reaches me in more than a Tom commentary sense because of my ethnic background, when he says, as far as London is concerned, there's never enough dead Slavs.
There you go. Well, look, just a brief comment on the AI tools, and Veles, I mean, again, on the AI thing, I work with AI a fair amount, and you said it so well. Just ask it, like, literally, if you don't have a starting point on which AI to use, how to use it, just ask, hey, I'm trying to do this. How do I do it using AI? And it'll walk you down the path.
Exactly. I literally, folks, just took another certification for myself professionally, where part of the course material was talking about how to use AI for brainstorming. And the good thing about those tools, and I will admit, my personal favorite is Claude for a number of reasons. But for any of them, you don't need to give it as much information as you think you do when you're trying to get things done. But if you phrase the questions in terms of, think of it, to use the phrase in the IT world, iteratively, think of it as pieces. You're probably not going to, unless it's something very simple, like, please, rewrite this email and make it sound more professional or more whatever. But, and boy, I got to tell you, the people I work with currently, I don't think any of us at this point are writing, unless it's just a brief, hey, find the attached. Any of us that are writing email traffic that goes to like more than 4 people, I don't think any of us are not using AI to double check and make sure its use of the King's English is pretty good. It's gotten to the point that some of the people I work with, we sometimes joke with each other that, not like I can't take you seriously, but it's like I wish your email of thanks or praise or whatever was from the heart, because I know this was written by AI. It's just the system is talking to me. It's not you. But yeah, like, even when it comes to brainstorming, just give it enough detail to say, I'm trying to think of the following. Where would you recommend I start? And then once it gives you an initial answer, then from there you can ask it further follow-on questions about, like, hey, items 1 and 2 you provided, tell me more about those, etc.
Yeah, I've heard AI coders say it's all about the questions that you ask. You have to know how to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
There's one question I had for you, Veles. You were talking about narrative control and so on, and you used to say that once somebody's audience goes above about 100,000, that's when you have to kind of. So where's Rogue at now?
We're at 89,000. Our highest, I think we crested almost at 120. This was
our problems, in my opinion. Our problems with YouTube really started kicking in once we were above 100,000.
Yep,
and
absolutely
the time and the country it was, and the topics that we were covering. But yeah, you reach a certain number, and it's like, okay, and I mean, the irony, folks, is if you think about it this way, I've professionally worked in environments where I've never really ever held the title of director or vice president, but I've also been the trusted advisor or the consultant or what have you, and I've been authorized by those people or even boards of directors to do things. And it's amazing the degree to which people will show deference to me purely because they're scared or they want me to go away as fast as possible before I start changing things, versus when I held a job title in a company and I could be telling them the building's on fire and no one will listen to me because I'm not a vice president. Similarly in Hollywood, you know, you get one or two good movies, your star's on the rise, and then out of the woodwork they come. We need you to sign this new contract. We need you to do this. We need you to start making public statements about, well, I don't even know anything about that topic. Nobody asked you. We own you. This is what's happening. Either that or your next acting job is a dog food commercial. I mean, it just goes on. And so I've joked on this show for years, and V has said it, and Nick has said it, and many others have said it. If you're gaining traction in a social media platform, I mean, I don't mean it the way I'm going to say it, but it's like, this stuff belongs to the government. This stuff belongs to the masters of psychological control.
Exactly.
And the last thing they want is some yahoo out there talking about stuff.
Yeah. Which brings a big bullseye to like guys like all of a sudden Nick Fuentes coming out of nowhere, you know?
I mean, that's one thing I'm trying to figure out. I've asked some people who are pretty savvy who runs or controls him. And I can't seem to find anything. Everybody's like, well, he was doing his thing for 10 years, heavily canceled. Like, it's not like he came out of nowhere.
No. I'm not saying he came out of nowhere. I'm saying like, this is a guy who was subjected to a corner. Why all of a sudden his narrative is out? Like, there's a lot of anti-Israel stuff out that's trending. There's a lot of immigration things that's trending. These things are true. I'm not saying this is disinfo or whatnot. But what I'm saying, why are they allowing this to get out is the question.
Yeah.
Because we all know this is all governmental controlled PSYOP BS at the end of the day. And it's like, it's remarkable to be like, I mean, you know, there are days that, you know, us three, we sit around and I think to myself, maybe all three of us should get on camera and wear beanies, you know?
Right.
Strap beards. See the comments like this, and I love you, Short Bus, but is he really a glowy though? Like, I can't, like,
I don't know, man.
Look, stand by. We can look at Candace Owens.
Fuentes has no principles. He's a hired gun.
Well, is he though? Who hired him?
He is.
Well, again, I go back to Gangs in New York, where in the course of the movie, DiCaprio's father's gang, in later years, DiCaprio starts bumping into people that was in his father's gang who are now working for the gang that defeated him. It's just, who's going to hire you? Which gang are you part of? And then the scene where the well-known Scottish or Irish actor, the red-haired guy, who his thing in the he had the big stick.
He's amazing.
He put a big notch in his stick every time he killed somebody.
Yeah,
and where the butcher goes to speak to him, like basically to recruit him over to his side, and then ends up killing him or whatever, which, you know, violates a rule. It's the same thing here. I mean, somebody once said, and I can't remember, she's the very thin, very animated commentator that was on Fox News for a long time. She drew a lot of fire, very unapologetic about her comments. No. And Family Guy made fun of her that her body was being used as a refrigerator to keep drinks at Fox News. But somebody again,
you talk about the hot blonde chick at Fox, kind of hot.
It was years ago. She's not current.
Okay.
But anyway, the net of this person is that somebody out there who had a blog post or whatever provided all this detail about the fact that she was a raging liberal from an East Coast university, didn't believe a single conservative idea on the planet. Correct. But once she was hired, you know, she you need to use your powers for good. She used her same debate skills and capabilities to be a mouthpiece on Fox. And, you know, I remember the former ABC reporters who went over to Fox in the early days before Fox became just a caricature of what it is, no different than CNN. But reporters have switched sides repeatedly, especially during the end of the Donald's first administration. Mike Moore was interviewing a number of people who were talking about various bars in D.C., and God knows I've been there, where a number of people from the administration were ready to switch sides at a moment's notice. And this goes, folks, to the content I was covering a couple of weeks ago, where I said, Why is there open warfare now, even among conservative or alternative commentators, much less media figures?
Well,
And it's because the money's getting shut off, and there's not enough to feed all these mouths. So they're trying to outdo each other or out-hat each other to stay relevant and stay paid, which is another reason why ESW Rogue, folks, is what it is, and we are who we are. Nobody's paying us.
No.
So we're just going to be the cranky, quirky people we are here that you've come to know and love.
Right, well, and this brings us back to I want to stay on Fuentes for a minute. So the thing about Fuentes is that I've asked people who are savvy to figure out, because you can look at Candace Owens. We know who pays her, right? Her husband,
Chatham House, along with Bannon,
Chatham House, Israel Links, City of London, really.
Which no Israel Links? They're not
City
Israel
of London extension, right? So I mean, you look at Tim Pool. I believe
look
people
who she's married to.
What's that?
Look who's Candace is married to. George.
That's what I'm saying. And she's married to a guy
who's British nobility, man.
Yeah. This is very obvious. But Nick Fuentes doesn't have any of that we know of. Now, I think that, sure, very high likelihood he is either a stooge or a shill. One being where you're hired and you know what you're doing. The other where you're just allowed to run loose and you end up doing the bidding anyway. Like guys like Tim Fuentes, he all of a sudden will come out with this information. Where is he getting it? Right. So there's always that idea you talked about earlier, Veles, of people like doing their own work supposedly, but it turns out someone's feeding them. Does he know he's doing it? Does he not? But what I can't get from anybody is who is doing it. Well, and I dare anybody in the audience to tell me who it is.
It's this. I think it's the same group that
we all think. We can think a lot of things, but we don't have anybody who he's.
No, we don't. We don't. Look, we're all reading other people's mail, right? And here's the thing about Fuentes, right? Fuentes has always been a noisy little tart, off in a corner, encapsulated in a digital jail cell forever. Why do they allow him out?
Well, that's what they did with Hitler, isn't it?
Well, here's the thing. Let me finish. So why do they allow him out? Number one. And number two, if you look, he's the more extreme end. They allowed him to become a more extreme end of what Tucker and what Candace and what Bannon has been saying.
Yes.
So he fits in the same arc, the same strategy that Chatham House, City of London, is pushing. Right? We know that the City of London and the Zionists they're at odds right now. They're at odds. It seems like the Zios have gotten out of control from the city guys, right? But now bear with me a moment, right? So Fuentes is allowed to say that, and there are several items where Fuentes said if I was paid $150 million, I'd flip. The kid he's not principled, right? He says these things. He's been saying it for quite some time. The thing is now all of a sudden a platform is being built around. Like there's 1,000,001 shorts of Fuentes on YouTube, and he doesn't have a YouTube show.
Tucker has him on. Right? Pierce Morgan has him on.
Exactly. Right. Think who's Pierce? Pierce is Chatham, London, right? So notice the circles his name. You start noticing these patterns. You're like, aha. So they need this guy at the tip of the spear. He's the tip of the spear. He is the tip of the spear where he'll say the most outlandish stuff, but that attracts the crowd. That'll bring them back to the less severe or the less hardened talking heads. Tucker, Candace, Bannon, right?
Well, I'll wait till you finish because I've been studying Fuentes. I have ideas.
Go ahead, share
it. So he wants to cleave away like the little hats, right? He obviously doesn't like Israel. The other theory is that he's the guy that they use to gin up a lot of quote unquote anti-Semitism so that the Israelis can say everybody's anti-Semitic and then all of a sudden do some new draconian laws. The other end of it is that he supports the invasion of like South American countries. So he openly supports partnership with Europe. He thinks the European countries are our greatest partners. He doesn't like China. You don't hear him talk too badly about Russia either way. So if you kind of look at him and the message he's putting out there, that's where, Chatham House fits in. Right. And if you listen to Tom Luongo, and I know everybody wants to talk trash on Tom, but, Tom has said that City of London's thrown Israel under the bus. Now, is that kayfabe or not? the result's the same in the short term. So I'm just trying to, what I cannot find anybody able to do is to look at Fuentes like one could look at Candace Owens and say, "Oh, well, yeah, she's married to so and so." That's
Well, here's the thing: you got to
we can
understand.
look at,
I'll tell you
what's her
exactly where
name,
Fuentes
Charlie
fits in.
Kirk's wife,
Yeah.
ex Charlie
No.
Kirk, where she
I'll
came
tell you exactly about Fuentes. He's like I say, he's the tip of the spear, right? But you got to understand, out of all of them, he's the most expendable.
Yes.
He's worthless to them. He has no future in that. The kid thinks he has a room at some sort of table. There's no room for him at the table. He's an expendable little match.
Well, he thinks they're going to kill him.
Well, whatever he thinks. His martyrdom, they'll make money on his death. They made money on Charlie's death, right? So they'll do the same thing to him. He is expendable. And unlike Tucker, unlike Candace, unlike Bannon, they are of worth and value. They are assets. This kid is just like a low-level FBI asset or something like that. You see what I'm saying? Like
he is a very bright object.
Yes.
That draws attention away from the things, even if he's, as the old saying goes, even if he's saying the right things in the right way, that's what he's been told to do. The other two examples I'll offer, one is Neil Young, the musician.
Yeah.
If you look at Neil Young's statements in the 1970s on race, on what he thinks of the African American community, the list goes on, not a friend. But as soon as his entire book of music was sold to whoever it was, all of a sudden Neil Young is out there supporting BLM and everything else. Now, to your point, Algo, about, well, who is this person involved with? It goes to what I said earlier about it takes time. And of course, the problem is, for like a 1 hour program like this, we get one data point that took 2 weeks to get that data. And it's like, well, the answer is 4. As soon as Neil Young was owned by the people who, now it's funny when you think about it, it's his music and he sold it. But a researcher found through a public information request a copy of the contract, and Neil Young was obligated to make public relations statements at the behest of the now owner of his music, for which he received millions and millions and millions of dollars. So now suddenly a guy who has no love for that community is talking like he's their closest friend during the various police brutality issues and everything else. But again, to V's point, as soon as they no longer needed Neil Young is off the TV.
Well, he took his music off of what was it, Spotify. And man, it's such a bummer that he didn't get to make his $1.62 a month after that. No one cares about Neil Young. Closed systems, Veles, you were talking about, and by the way, I love Neil Young's music actually, but you were talking about the data centers, where they could loop the water around rather than bringing it in and out. And Rob is with us in the audience, and he was saying that we were just talking about this yesterday. Well, during the we were doing this in the comments during our roundtable yesterday. So why do they need to pipe the water in? If Rob's there, he is. Rob's there. Rob 83331. He was saying that there is a requirement for the heat exchange. There is an evaporation component. So apparently, the level of evaporation that happens might require them to push more water in, but the solution might be to use more electricity to fix the problem and to push the circulation. So that's something I don't know much about, but Rob killed it on that. We could maybe look into that for
the evaporation. The evaporation should not be that great, and you would have the same factor involved in nuclear power plant operations, which yes, you have the cooling towers, but again, we need to see the data. We need to see the engineering data to understand, because the evaporation component in a nuclear power plant is way higher than a data center. And again, I've worked in data centers. I've worked with and watched the evolution of data centers since the 90s to now. I am not an expert, but I sure as hell know that area. I cannot understand how much power would be going, and yes, I know the power use levels of the larger ones, the ones that are like multiple football fields long. I cannot envision how that evaporation is not recollected back into the system. There's ways to do that, And the other thing is, I've looked at numerous photos of these very large mega data centers who are up and operating, and there's not much, if any, outgassing. I'm not saying he's wrong. I think it's a valid point to investigate, but my gut, which is a lot of what we're discussing in the last few minutes on a number of topics, my gut is that this is more a move to capture access to water, same as Nestle did, than necessarily a need of the data centers themselves. But I'm more than open to data that may indicate, yes, there's more off-gassing than we thought.
I would say, what if you could not only capture the water, but it just simply goes through the system and into your own water rights scenario? Just an idea. Which is what you just said. So Dave Chappelle video, I brought that up. She gets some audio here.
Man, it's not that serious.
Well,
First Amendment is first for a reason.
Sorry, I had it at the high speed because I was trying to find the sound bite. And then
again,
you'll see why
folks, this product has imperfections which indicate that it was made by hand.
Right, and on top of that, you'll see why my impression sounded like it did.
The First Amendment is first for a reason. The Second Amendment is just in case the first one doesn't work out.
Now, this is at his acceptance speech for his Mark Twain Lifetime Achievement Award at the Kennedy Center. This is to Washington, D.C. types, everybody. And his whole commentary before that had to do with the fact that his jokes are racist. And he's saying, look, the jokes are racist. They're fun. Sometimes we joke about them afterwards. People don't like it. But, he's just kind of saying everybody needs to chill out. It's not that serious.
Right.
And this is in the height of cancel culture, by the way. This is 2019. And the pandemic slammed down right after that. Rob McCoy, by the way, works at Prager. Prager is a Zionist outfit. So Rob McCoy, the supposed pastor over Charlie Kirk. If anybody thought Charlie Kirk was not friends with Israel, think again. There are those who feel that Charlie Kirk was starting to message against Israel, and that might be why a random person supposedly shot him. We went over that. And the last bit I have was on the opium wars and fentanyl. Veles or Via, I don't know which one of you it may have been, but people are trying to blame the fentanyl thing on China, when in reality, isn't there something to do with the shipping of said items, precursors, and even more than just the shipping? Doesn't it come out of Rotterdam?
Yes, ... However, and I'm not trying to mess with anybody's heads here. Those are true components of the issue. However, it appears from a couple of sources that the distribution and management of fentanyl from the United States was being managed out of the northeast of the United States by Americans. Now, not to be indelicate, China's a very large country. There's a lot of ways to get things done in China. I use the word loosely, illegally. That goes for arms, that goes for money laundering, that goes for a lot of things. So blaming China for fentanyl is just flat incorrect. Do you have components coming out of China? Yes, but a lot of that manufacturing, not all, of the finished product, because you're dealing with chemicals that are at times, depending on which of the chemicals we're talking about, are inherently unstable. So the final production of the product is often in Mexico, but the distribution planning appears from initial. And again, this is another one of those things, folks, where investigations were starting, amateur people were looking into it, and then all of a sudden crickets. And it's like, okay, that doesn't just happen. But that it was being directed out of the northeast of the United States by quote unquote certain parties.
Yeah, I think the precursors for fentanyl, fentanyl is a drug used in the medical community. Just because you make
hospice care, you go to hospice care, you're on your deathbed, you're suffering from cancer. It's very, very, very vital for palliative care.
Yes.
Palliative care. Yep.
Yeah.
Effectively, it's a painkiller.
Yeah.
So it's not like making fentanyl is inherently illegal.
No.
Making those precursors have to be made somewhere. And I understand not only Veles in Mexico, but also they're finding mega labs in Canada where the
correct. I'll tell you guys the whole thing. This is also corroborated with Douglas McGregor, Colonel McGregor. The way it works is this: you got a lot of the raw material components, a small bit of which comes out of China. There's a nice chunk of it that comes out of Taiwan. Who controls Taiwan? It's the same people in Taiwan that also operate out of Macau. That's going to be the triads. People think the triads are Chinese. They're not. They're actually Taiwanese. They're the Khmer Rouge. They're the old breakaway that fled during the revolution in China in 48. Now, fast forwarding that, a lot of that componentry goes into Canadian labs, which are also then combined, refined, and then shipped over to Mexico. From Mexico, the cartels either distill it a little bit, or they process it in a way where there's narco-controlled pharmacy labs right there in Mexico. They package it up into into either powder, pills, all different types of substrates, and then ship it north into the United States. That's the way the product works. So the whole that's why you don't hear that rhetoric out of Trump's mouth anymore. China,
Yeah,
China.
no, China. That narrative dropped away because people started unearthing the entire bullshit behind it.
by the way, just a public service announcement. Evidently, the term Karen has been replaced by the term Jessica.
You garbled up there, fellas.
I said that evidently the term Karen is no longer in vogue. It's now shifting to the term Jessica.
Ha!
What? Why?
Evidently, Gen Z has taken the Karen term, and it's now in their lexicon. It's Jessica. And by the way, that term applies to men or women, just to be fair and transparent and all that.
Transparent. Veles, you had to jump off the show yesterday, and so I was giving some honor. Well, I am honored to have worked with everybody here. I'm honored to have the audience, and in particular, Veles, honored to work with you. As far as I'm concerned, your caliber and the work that you do is as high pedigreed and impressive as anybody we have on this channel.
You know why I like Veles?
I'm not done glazing yet. And on top of that,
by the way, folks, Algo is trying to sell me a car right now. So
yes, I am. Send me the 100. You can send me the $100 later, fellas.
Yeah.
But also, we have to keep in mind that while the gorilla was looking for bananas in the forest for about a year, it was essentially Veles who kept this channel alive and going every week. So I just wanted to give that thanks and mention that the honor is mine.
Well, my deep appreciation to you both, and it was wonderful to have our colleagues and friends on yesterday, and also a special shout out to CJ to have him back with us again on the program, and Ben as he continues his I wouldn't say meteoric, that's not the best way to say that, but his continued presence that he's growing with his work. And I wish Ben the best, and with what he's doing. He was kind enough to let me appear on his program previously. I'm just hoping that when he hits 100 or 200,000 people, we don't see him wearing a hat or saying that he stands with Israel.
and a chin strap beard, getting $7,000 paychecks. What were you going to say though? The thing about Veles?
The thing about Veles, when Veles and I first started communicating, he sent over his bona fides. I had a thorough look through to it, and the one thing I love about Veles, he's one of the few guys, folks, that's been there, done that, and got the T-shirt twice. He's not some guy who's talking to you about abstract things that he doesn't know about, he hasn't experienced. This is somebody who's been there, has heavily experienced, and that's why I like to not only call him a colleague, but a very good friend. Love to bounce off ideas off phone, and we have all three of us have great conversation. That's why I love having him on here. We're very blessed to have you, bro. Very blessed to have you.
Well, and I deeply appreciate that, and I've also been lucky enough to have dinner with both CJ and V and the respective misses. And in fact, I've been able to give V a book or two for the Mrs. Gorilla because she's got some similar interests and things. But it truly, folks, it's been and by the way, before anybody starts going, wait a minute, this sounds like he's leaving. I'm not going anywhere. I may be making a job change in the near term, but no, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere, at least to the best of my knowledge. But I truly do marvel at the fact, even friends of mine I knew in college have made comments to me and brought it up where they've said, my God, who are these people that let you get on the air for 5 years? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, it's, as the old saying goes, only family and close friends can make fun of you like that.
Right.
But it's amazing the journey we've been on. And I had a comment for some other content I didn't use today. It still blows my mind when I look at, because I document these things in advance, so I try my best not to go off road here. I've got 4 backups of my prior content because I've literally written at current count like more than 1,200 pages of material, which now proves valuable, because if I got to go back and like, I thought I did a show on that and go research it, and it's like, oh yeah, here it is. Because I often have like URLs and things for where the source was for stuff I've had. I'm equally interested by the fact that, because of the unique nature of what we do here at ESW, that I've not been visited, to best of my knowledge, I'm sure I've been checked out electronically, but I've not been visited by anybody knocking on my door going, okay, very funny, here's your hat.
Here's your beanie hat.
Here's your
This is what
beanie
you
and
say.
chin strap.
Well, and I've shared with family and friends about, Gus's experiences where on occasion when Gus goes into the United States, he does get stopped, for lack of a better word, by the government wanting to know what as Gus calls it, the wage slaves, his clientele, who they are and what they're doing and this, that, and the other, because of the work he does. And, every time I leave the country and come back, I always kind of wonder, am I going to get the Gus treatment? Which has never happened. I get the normal one eyeball looking at me as a passport is checked and welcome back to the United States. But anywho, yeah, it's I can't thank V and Ago enough, not just for these shows, but for the this is the stone cold truth, for the 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning exchanges we've had. My phone will beep and I'll look at something and be like, "Holy God, I hadn't even thought of that." Yeah, that's great. And then I'll say something, and V's like, "You made me laugh so hard I woke up my wife." Sorry, it's just us being us again.
Oh, well, man, that was wonderful, guys. Thank you so much. V.
Yeah, enjoy your weekend, everybody.
Happy New Year, and obviously next week is more of a actual start to the work week on the 5th, unless for those of you that are working the weekend. And also, and I mean this sincerely, because I got some messages via email and some DMs on Discord from some folks. We do have a lot of airline pilots, flight attendants, truck drivers, nurses, other folks who don't just work third shift, they work all shifts. You all stay safe out there. Keep your eye on the road and keep your eye on the altimeter, and stay safe out there.
Absolutely. And with that being said, Cowboy, take it away.